Welcome to the Devy Debate. All right, boys, are we ready to debate? Bruning, are you ready to go head-to-head with me?
I am.
Got to get my popcorn out here. Hold on.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I'm Felix Sharp. I know you didn't think that we would get through this episode without mentioning the name one Zach F. Wilson.
It is first and goal. Ball spotted just inside the 10. Algier in. Wilson faked it to him and keeps it. Zach Wilson, the speed, and he dives for the end zone. Touchdown.
That's Austin Nace.
Gibbs, who is probably going to be the best pass catcher out of the three.
Now, first down, he's going to get after it again. And look at the speed and the spark and the score from Gibbs. Just what Georgia Tech needed.
That's Matt Bruning.
G. Scott Jr. Obviously, I waxed poetic about him on the last episode, so I won't do that again here.
And this time it's Fields on the carry. Watch out. Justin Fields. Hello, Columbus. 51 yards.
Austin, you tweeted something, bro. You tweeted your running back rankings. Explain yourself.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Ohio State fan talking there.
Oh, shit.
That is why you come to the Devy Debate. Apologies to Kirk Herbstreit. We ran out of time. We'll get him rescheduled soon. And for Matt Bruning and Austin Nace, I'm Felix Sharp. Good night and good luck.
Of course, he starts off the show muted. After giving it's not even muted, his mic's not connected. Watch.
It's 9:30 Eastern time, the time zone where Jesus was born. That means it's time for the Devy Debate. That's Matt Bruning. That's Austin Nason. I'm Felix Sharp. On a Laffy Taffy version of tonight's show is Travion Henderson. The only answer at the 101 in freshman drafts. Will Steve Sarkisian start Casey Thompson or Hudson Card at quarterback at Texas? And will Mac Jones ever be a quarterback one in fantasy football? But we start with Tampa Bay's 31-9 stomping of Kansas City in Super Bowl 55. Tampa Bay wins a home game against a depleted Kansas City team while Tom Brady wins his 7th ring in a game that really wasn't that entertaining. Matt Bruning, what did you learn from Kansas City getting beat down?
That the Browns should have beaten them because they had given the Buccaneers a better game than the Chiefs. Now, offensive line means a lot more than people were giving it credit for. That's what I think. Obviously, losing Eric Fisher, and I don't remember, was it Schwartz, their center? Obviously, losing those two players. And Mahomes, I really do think that toe was bothering him a whole lot more in the second half. I know he was throwing balls, matrix all off the ground and everything, but he definitely was hurting in that second half, the way he was running, having to dodge everything. And I think the play calling was horrible too, if I'm being honest. I hate to question a guy like Andy Reid because he's probably forgotten more about football in the past second than I know I've learned in my entire lifetime. But it seemed like they were doing a whole lot of trying to go deep on every single play, and it just was not working out for
him. Yeah.
Austin? Yeah.
I guess I learned never to question Felix. I think he was the only one that was right last week about that. But at the risk of Felix's head getting too big, that is not the takeaway that I have from it. I think the biggest takeaway is that Kansas City just needs other pass catchers outside of Hill and Kelsey. I mean, you can say, well, they have Tyreek and Kelsey. I mean, those are two great players, and they are. But we saw what happened where the Bucs mostly took those two away, and nobody else could catch anything. It was honestly pretty embarrassing. Overall, just kind of watching, the amount of passes that bounced off guys' hands throughout the game. And Kelsey and Hill were guilty of it as well. So it wasn't just the other guys, but they certainly weren't helping. And I think it's pretty obvious that Kansas City likes speed a lot out of that position. It's just what they have been going toward in the draft. So I'm interested to see what they do in a very deep skill position draft. I was looking at my list the other day of just, where I have wide receivers ranked for the year. And speedy guys, you have Rondale Moore and Waddle and kind of in my tier 1. Those guys probably both go too early for Kansas City. In my tier 2, I have Terrace Marshall and De'Ami Brown. Maybe more realistic, Terrace Marshall would give them some size. That would be a very intriguing matchup there. Tier 3, I have Tutu Atwell, Kadarius Toney, everybody's favorite recent Twitter discussion, Dwayne Eskridge, Tamorrion Terry, maybe even Amari Rogers. And then after that, you have like a Brennan Eagles, a Marquez Stevenson. So there's a lot of speed in this draft. I'm very interested just when they decide, or if they decide to go after it.
Austin, as you noted, I called this game, and that's not going to be my takeaway. But what I'm going to say is that football is not hard. It is a very basic math game. If you can rush 4, then you can guard 5 potential eligible wide receivers with 7 defenders. It's 7 on 5. Now, if you have to chip a running back, if you have to chip with a tight end, then you're 4 on 7, and the math is changed against you even more. And so that's what we saw there. We knew that Kansas City's offensive line was going to be depleted. It was. They had to chip with tight ends, with running backs. And so the math was just off the entire game. They could play too high, and they did play too high. They could get to Patrick Mahomes with Shaq Barrett, with Ndamukong Suh, and with Jason Pierre-Paul. I said before the game, I thought Shaq Barrett was going to be the Super Bowl MVP. Oh, he wasn't. He had 1 sack and 4 quarterback hits. I mean, he was a presence in the game because that offensive line was depleted. Football is not rocket science. It's just basic math. And what Kansas City was able to do was play 7 on 4, play 7 on 5. More often than not, you're going to be able to win, especially if you just have to eliminate Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So that's my takeaway from the game. It's not a hard game. It's basic math. All right. We need our listeners to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. We will be announcing some fairly big news in the coming episode, so you want to make sure that you are tuned in and not missing a show. But we are very, very excited for our very special guest this evening. He is the host of the Devy Deep Dive podcast. He is the creator of the all-encompassing Devy Dashboard. He's the engine behind the NFL Draft Bible's Film Room. You can find him at Devy Deep Dive on Twitter, but let's not joke. If you are listening to this show, you know who this guest is. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon Lejeune.
Hey, guys. How are you? Man, that is one build-up, man. I got to tell you. That's something else. Hey, great to be on.
Deserved.
Oh, I appreciate
Brandon,
it.
First question for you. You are an OG in Devy, okay? Talk to us a little bit about your process for player evaluation.
Well, I've educated myself, I feel like, as much as I could over the last couple years. More of a film guy than an analytics guy, although I'm trying to incorporate analytics to coincide with my film. But I love making game films, which is a great way to scout players. That's really how I got into it and, started my whole Devy dashboard and everything. But my process is a little different. I usually have 4 or 5 criteria for each player. The QBs, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends. And then I, go through those criteria when I watch players and try to be as consistent as possible in using the same criteria. And then, kind of grade my players, weighting what I, per position, what I value the most in, per position. And then I do a lot of research after that. And I encourage everyone to do that as well. You do your own film research, but then, go out, and there's a lot of other, people out there that do the same thing. And I kind of use that to, kind of coincide with what I see. So, and then you got to kind of go back after the draft, and I'd like to kind of see, what you hit or miss. So going back and watching prospects too, of the elite players that make it and the ones that don't, the ones you get disappointed in, right? That you think are going to make it, why didn't they? And then the ones that make it that you didn't think did, why did they? So it's an evolving process. It's a great hobby. I love it. I love being in the community with all you guys.
Do you find, especially with your creation of the dashboard here and everything in the past couple of months, that has altered how you approach things or look at things?
Actually, no, it's helped me organize things. That's really why I created it. We all started off with a Google sheet, and then I found this program Notion. I put it all together. It's been great. But what it does, it keeps me contained and organized with all of my guys, and it provides a bunch of links to everything on the internet. So it's the only place I need to go to then branch out, or if I want to watch a huddle film or go to Rivals or something like that. But and then I just write my film notes for each player in that same space, which is a lot easier to do in a other program other than Google Docs. And but so it's been great for me, and I just want to share it with the Devy community as well. So it's a great just launch pad to really do your own research. So it's really helped me organize. It's been great. I got 400 hours into this thing. I'm telling you, all the pictures and, it looks pretty, right? So I'm trying to add more information as, adding numbers and analytics right now is really the next step in it. But I got links to films and everything in there. It's pretty cool.
So is there a position that you feel particularly strong about evaluating? Like Felix up there thinks he evaluates running backs pretty good. He usually just steals all of Austin's guys whenever we do our mock drafts and everything. I think I'm good at quarterbacks. Austin's the king of wide receivers. What position just kind of like speaks to you when you're watching him?
I think probably be running back and wide receiver, but I'm going to lean wide receiver because there's more guys to look at, right? I mean, the quarterbacks, let's not kid ourselves. Usually by the time you get to the draft, there's 5 or 6. We're going to talk about one of them tonight, right? And usually the ones after that, after the pros get it right, there's nobody that really emerges. But in the wide receiver space, you have Gabriel on the Bills, and you've got, Claypool, who was like a late bloomer last year. Guys like that, trying to find those diamonds in the rough. Because really, when you play this great game of Devy and C2C, right? The best part is getting that college player on your roster, on your taxi squad, and watching, those guys develop. And then, come draft day, it's like the best night of the night, right? I mean, because you got all these guys, you wonder where they land. So I find wide receivers are more fun because there's more of them to watch and trying to find the diamonds. And I love the one-on-one matchups that wide receivers have versus a running back. I feel like running backs, a lot has to happen with the offensive line and stuff like that. But when you're looking at wide receivers, what's fun to me is to really look at those one-on-one matchups, getting off the line of scrimmage and how they win, how they create space to, how they manipulate those defenders. So like for me, to answer your question, it's wide receivers are what I enjoy watching the most and really trying to hone in on the craft of figuring out which guys are going to translate to our dynasty rosters.
Brandon, this is the obligatory question for every guest. Zach Wilson or Justin Fields at QB2?
I just did a mock with the guys at the Draft Bible, and I'm going to go with Justin Fields only because of
this close to getting kicked off. I was ready to hit the button.
I don't know. I mean, I think, a year ago we were talking about, was Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields the number one guy, right? I mean, that was the big debate, and then all of a sudden when, the beloved Felix's guy, Wilson shows up, everyone's starting to question Fields. Yes. Towards the end of the season, did he have some rough games? Yes. But I think he showed his toughness. He's played, for, 2 solid years of production against good competition. I've seen more with my eyes. I like what I see. I think he's got big upside. I think they both could be very, very successful in the NFL, and they're both going to be top 10 draft picks. So you'll be lucky to get, if you have one of them on your dynasty, Devy rosters or C2C leagues, be thrilled. But I'm sorry, Felix, I'm going to have to side with Bruning on this one.
The real question is, will the next guy be better than Zach Wilson? That's what I really want to know, but we'll save that for when we get to him.
Well, let me just point out that out of the 4 people in this chat, there's only one that's not part of the Devy Dashboard community. And it's not me. It is not Austin, obviously. So I'm just going to say that.
True.
All right.
That is true. I'm not.
Boys, are we ready to get into the Devy debates with our guest, Mr. Lejeune?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. First question, Brandon, I know that you are high on Mac Jones. You have been. You actually may be against consensus at this point. I'm a fan. You put me onto the Saturday to Sunday football podcast. Matt Caraccio and Paul Perticchese, not very high on Mac Jones. I want to get your take. Will Mac Jones ever be a QB1 in fantasy?
I think, and this is a lazy answer to your question that I'm going to start it off, and then I'll get to the details. I think a lot of it has to depend on where he lands. And I think we underestimate how much important that takes. And I know a lot of guys say, you draft your player, wherever he lands, you draft the talent. I get it. But from a quarterback standpoint, it can make or break, a player. I think if he were to land in a great, like, let's say it's Indianapolis, you got Jonathan Taylor running the ball. You got some stability on the offensive line. You got a good defense. Going back to your Kansas City Chiefs comments, when I was listening before getting on the show, to me, I'm an old school guy. It's about running the football. It's about good defense. That's what the Chiefs need. They never got any running game going, and their defense couldn't, keep up. That was, I think, the reason they didn't go. But if he were to go to a place like Indianapolis, that he's got a good setting, and a good, surrounding cast, I think he could be effective. Is he going to be QB1? Probably not. I would say just outside of that. I mean, right now I got him at like QB4 or 5, just like everybody else. I'm going to go with the athleticism that he doesn't bring to the table, like, the Wilsons and the Lances and stuff like that. So I'm going to go for that upside just from that player standpoint. But I think if he were to land in a great spot that leaned on a running game that had a good defense, I think he can distribute the ball. We've seen him do it at Oklahoma. The biggest knock and question everybody has is, can he maneuver, under pressure? Can he make plays off script? Can he handle the pressure? And, I don't think we really know yet. So if he goes to a team that has a horrible offensive line, like the Philadelphia Eagles right now, that are like in disarray with no weapons on the outside to throw the ball to, he's going to struggle.
Yeah, I think the athleticism thing is the big question mark for me. And I don't think he's a bad athlete. Like, I see people call him a statue and stuff, and I don't think he is. Like, Kyle Trask is a statue. I don't think Mac Jones is a statue. The thing is, and I think it kind of like shifts a little bit every year, where the NFL just requires a tiny bit more athleticism at that position every single year. And I just start to wonder with some of these guys, like we're going to talk about Sam Heward here in a few minutes. I'm just wondering if the day is coming where those guys just can't quite, like, the arm is good and, the intelligence is good, but is that enough to make up for the lack of athletic ability and for fantasy purposes, the lack of rushing upside that a lot of these guys give? I think like his ceiling is a Kirk Cousins, who is an underrated fantasy quarterback. I mean, he's a guy that I target late when I do these kinds of things, and he puts up good numbers,
and he has been a QB1 at times during his career.
Yeah. But were we taking Kirk Cousins? Like, I know he wasn't considered this. Like if you, this is kind of a stupid question, because I was going to say, if you had the chance that you knew Mac Jones's career would be Kirk Cousins, where would you take him in a super flex draft this year?
Yeah, I mean, you would pretty high.
Go
I mean, you would.
I was going to say late. I was going to say, late first. It depends.
Yep.
If you really need a quarterback, I mean, you always draft for value, not really for need. I mean, it's kind of the general rule. But to your point, we just watched the GOAT. The guy can't scramble over the shit, right? I mean, you got Drew Brees, right? He has been successful. He's not a scrambler. I mean, he'll maybe punch it in at the goal line. But look at those environments that those two players play in. I mean, they've always had good offensive lines, good head coaches, good offensive systems. And I think if Kirk Cousins were to land in a situation that had that surrounding talent and that, coaching capacity, I think he could sneak in there to be a QB1.
Yeah, I think it's an easy answer. Yes, he can sneak in to be a QB1. I mean, Austin, you just compared him to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins finished as QB11 this year. Right behind him, Matt Ryan, who's probably just as mobile as Mac Jones right now in his career. Tom Brady was up there in the top 10. Derek Carr, now he's obviously a little bit more mobile than Mac Jones, but 13. Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Stafford, Baker Mayfield. Mac Jones has a very safe floor. I've talked about it before. I do think he's a very smart player. I don't really think, while landing spot does matter, like what Brandon was saying, I think with the way that it seems like he processes the game, I think wherever he goes, he's going to be a good quarterback. You're not going to get the upside of Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence give you, like Brandon just mentioned, but I think his floor is much safer than a Zach Wilson and Trey Lance. And I think him going to a team, those NFL teams are going to know what they've got in him. That's why they're drafting him. He's going to go, everybody thinks, in the top 15. So outside of the Patriots, there's a lot of teams in there that still have weapons he could go to. So I think wherever he goes, if you're saying, will he ever finish as a QB1? I'm going to say yes. That gives me a lot. I think he's got at least maybe 8 to 10 year career. That's a long time for him to finish as QB1 one time.
I thought that Zach Wilson earlier in the season had the best opportunity to land in a good situation because, he was just beginning to get first round buzz. Right, Nobody saw him going in the 5th. And so I'm like, this guy's going to end up in New Orleans or in San Francisco. That's not going to happen now, but it could happen for Mac Jones. Now Mac Jones is the player who's going to be taken, in the late first round in a better situation. So we'll see what happens with him come April. All right, let's go to a true C2C Devy question. And the question is, Brock Vandagriff or Sam Heward for your 2021 freshman quarterback. Now, let me set this up a little bit for the people who don't know who these two players are. Sam Heward, the 5-star quarterback, the freshman, headed to the Washington Huskies from Washington State. He is the second ranked 2021 freshman quarterback, according to 24/7 Sports Rankings. Brock Vandagriff, on the other hand, is a 4-star quarterback headed to Georgia from Georgia, originally committed to Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma. He is the 4th-rated quarterback, according to 24/7 Sports. Brandon, you're obviously going to go with the consensus 5-star guy, so we can just move on, right? You're going Sam Heward?
No, I'm not. I would go Vandagriff. After watching them, I like the mobility he has when in watching Sam Heward or Howard or however you say it. I mean, I never really saw him run around very much. I never saw him. He had a very clean pocket. I like the size of Vandagriff better. I think he has a big arm. I did on my last podcast. I compared, Williams and Vandagriff and kind of just talked about their skill sets. And the guy has got mobility. And I didn't see that in Sam. So I like his size better. He's 6'3", already 205, and Heward is about 190. So I'm going with the upside in Georgia. And Washington, I question what playmakers they're really going to put around him for him to truly succeed. That's another concern that I have. I'd rather take the guy going to Georgia.
Oh, you did not just question
I'm
those Huskies playmakers. Oh,
I know.
You did not just do that.
Austin, tell our guest why he's wrong. I'm not even going to answer this question because Austin's going to answer it for me. So go ahead.
Sam Cement Shoes Heward. Go ahead, Austin. Go.
I feel like I've opened up a can of worms here. Am I going to get blasted here or something?
I do concede that Vandagriff is the more mobile player. I think he is more of the archetype of what teams are looking for now. But Heward is probably the only guy in this class. Like, I don't like this quarterback class. There's not a single guy in this class that excites me really that much as a complete package. Like last year, I loved Bryce Young and I loved DJU. There's not a guy in that level. But Heward is probably the best thrower of the ball in this class. I think, he consistently all 3 levels of the field, he's a lot better than a lot of other quarterbacks. But, I think the situation in Washington is underrated. I love Jalen McMillan, who was one of my top wide receivers in last year's class. They only played like 4 games or whatever this year. We didn't really get to break out, but I just love Jalen McMillan. He's basically Raheem Jarrett light. Like for those that missed out on Raheem Jarrett in last year's, Jarrett was too expensive for me last year in drafts. But I was like, I'll go get Jalen McMillan, who I think is virtually the same player. And then they also have Puka Nacua, who I really, really like as well. Just another kind of raw, athletic kid who's flashed in his couple years there. And then I don't know how to pronounce this guy's first name, if it's Rome or Rome, Adunze. But he's like in that same mold. We're just this big athletic kid. I mean, I think like outside of the top couple of teams that have been hoarding these wide receivers for the past couple of years, Ohio State, I think Washington has as good of a wide receiver group as any in the country.
Yeah, I mean, Cade Otton will probably be one of his primary targets too. So you got another playmaker there. So, I mean, I thought Vandagriff, his arm strength was outstanding. I mean, the guy was throwing lasers, man, all over the field. I mean, intermediate throws were like horizontal. I just love his velocity. So, but the bottom line is all these kids, when they come out, they're going to get in these developmental programs. And like you said, I agree with you, Austin. There's not one clear guy that is just lights out above everyone else. Although I think Williams, to me, is still at the top. Just his mobility is unreal. So.
That's true. I watch him and I'm just blown away what he does in the open field.
Oh,
I wish he could throw. If he could throw, I'd be so excited.
Yeah, he can throw. But I came away watching his film reminding me of Jalen Hurts. It's like, dude, throw the ball, stop running. I mean, when the play broke down, he would immediately go to run instead. Where Brock Vandagriff, if you compare them, and I talked about this on my podcast last week, Brock was always keeping his eyes down the field. Like now he's mobile. He's going to go east to west, but he's going to continue to look down the field because he wants to stretch the field and throw the ball where I felt Williams was tuck it and run it. And I'm going all the time. And that's what always frustrated me with Hurts. He would just run constantly without going through his progressions, trying to maneuver at least to make a play going down the field.
So I'm with Austin. I'm more on Heward than I am Vandagriff. Not that I don't like Vandagriff, but I have a question for you, Brandon. I think Felix is going to go Vandagriff. He took him like the first round of a C2C draft. So I'll ask you guys this question. Does it worry you guys at all about him going to Georgia? I know they get a lot of weapons there, but I'm not necessarily sure I believe in Kirby Smart being able to develop him into a top-tier quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the coaches. All I know, I think it'll be a good thing that he goes there and sits under JT Daniels for a season. Let him learn, and let's see what happens. Everyone has high hopes for JT Daniels, right? So he's in the same spot. Is he going to develop this offseason? He's a guy that could possibly rise next year and creep into that top 5 or 6 spot in 2022 QBs. We don't know yet. But I like the fact that Vandagriff is going to go and sit behind for his freshman year. I think that's always a good thing instead of rushing these kids out on the field.
Two points to tie up this conversation on Vandagriff versus old cement shoes. One is that, Brandon, I agree with you. Vandagriff keeps his eyes downfield when he's under pressure. There's a play from his junior season where he is rolling to his right and there's a DN bearing down on him. He ends up getting hit, but he tosses this backside post to his left on a dime about 40 yards down the field. Yes, that's what, and he can make throws off platform. He has a little bit of Zach Wilson in his game. Austin, you said earlier that the athleticism required to play the position is inching a little bit more. You need to be more athletic at the position. Well, Heward has less athleticism than Jones displays. So, I can't as much. Yes, he throws all these deep shots and you see that, but he's playing in Washington State, which isn't renowned for its high school football. So give me the two guys who can move and make plays off platform. One of those is Vandagriff. The other is the one that's going to Michigan and JJ McCarthy. So I'm actually going to take both of those guys over Sam Heward. All right, let's move on to another Devy. The question, TreVeyon Henderson, should he be the 101 in all C2C freshman drafts? Henderson, of course, the uber talented, uber productive high school product, ran for nearly 2,500 yards his junior season, headed to Ohio State for a team that's trying to reload, is going to have a new quarterback. Brandon, TreVeyon Henderson or the field at the 101 in freshman drafts?
I'm taking Henderson right now. I think the opportunity's there. The guy's electric. He really is in the second level. His lateral mobility without deaccelerating and his acceleration of his brakes, I thought was great. But yeah, for me, that's who I'm taking.
Yeah, I wish he was just a little bit bigger. Mm-hmm. I thought, I loved Bijan last year. I thought he was the clear number one. I thought the composite had it right. But he always just looked bigger than TreVeyon. Not only does TreVeyon weigh less than Bijan coming into school, but Bijan also packed on 15 pounds or whatever. I'm not that's the only question I have about Henderson is whether he can actually gain that weight. Mm-hmm. But I do think I like him a lot. I think he is the 101 because, like I said, none of these quarterbacks blow me away. I honestly just think outside receiver, this recruiting class just isn't very good. Now, obviously, there's a ton of risk saying that about a bunch of high school kids that are going to grow and mature and change so much over the next 4 years. But there really is not I call them in my rankings a tier 0 player, in my opinion. A guy that's just it can't miss. That is the rock, the anchor on a draft in the future. I just don't see that in this class, and maybe somebody will emerge over the next few years. But I think the thing that also these kids have working against them is that now they're coming into a lot of these programs where there's kids staying an extra year that didn't necessarily, wouldn't have been able to basically any other time in the history of the NCAA. So this recruiting class as a whole is very, very interesting to me. But I guess I would probably take Henderson at the 101.
Yeah, I agree with Austin. Exactly what he just said about the quarterbacks was going to be the only point that I'd make is assuming obviously most of our C2C leagues are super flex. I haven't been in one that isn't. If you had a DJU or a Bryce Young in this class, I would take them over Henderson, but that's it. I don't like any of these quarterbacks enough to take them. It helps that he's going to Ohio State. So to say, even if he went to that team up north and Ibuka was there on the board, I'd still take Henderson, even though I hate having players that play for that team. But Henderson to me is by far the best running back in this class. One of the few guys in this class that I'm not as worried about as some other people. Well, I don't think Austin's worried about him just based on the size, but I have no doubts about him projecting forward and being an all-star running back.
Well, it's interesting that you both mentioned his size because he has been comped to Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey was only about 205 pounds. So, maybe he's an uber talented and athletic prospect who can get away with being sub, 210. Maybe he plays at 208 or something like that eventually. But if he can get over 210 pounds, then I think that the weight isn't a concern. All right, let's move on. And we are going to answer that question from Post there.
Poust. It's Poust.
Poust.
Yeah.
Yes, Poust. All right. Now we're going to go south to Texas. Steve Sarkisian, the offensive genius there. He is bringing his Alabama offensive scheme and his Falcons offensive scheme to Texas. So I want to know, Casey Thompson, will he hold off Hudson Card for the starting quarterback position there for the Longhorns? Sam Ehlinger making the jump to the NFL. So we've got, again, Thompson, who has played sparingly behind Ehlinger. Thompson was the number 14 dual threat quarterback, number 26 overall quarterback in 2018, behind guys like Justin Fields, Adrian Martinez, Spencer Sanders. Hudson Card, though, was the number 4 dual threat quarterback and number 6 overall in the 2020 class behind Bryce Young, DJ Uiagalelei, CJ Stroud. I've even said that he is Bryce Young light. Brandon, how do you see this one playing out with the offensive genius Steve Sarkisian at the helm?
I would think that him coming into a new situation like he is, he's going to go with the more experienced player. I would think, unless Hudson Card comes in and blows him away, I think he's going to go with Thompson only because we saw a little bit of him last year. And I think he's going to have to figure it out when he gets into camp and really see these guys live for the first time and work with them. And I have no crystal ball. I have no idea if I'm in his shoes. If they both are kind of the same, I'm probably going to go with the guy that has a little bit more athleticism and a little bit more experience. And I'm not sure who that is at this moment.
Yeah, I think there was a really good article that came out this week on The Athletic interviewing 3 coaches that I believe were associated with the Texas Longhorns last year. And I don't know if the article insinuated they left with the coaching change or not. But they asked them a bunch of questions just about, what the roster looks like there and what to kind of expect to guess at what is going to shake out with Sark there in his first year. And there was it was a really good article. If you have a subscription to The Athletic, I would highly recommend it. But they talk about the quarterbacks. And there's a line in here saying that Sark went on a podcast last week with Stuart Mandel, basically saying that he wouldn't have taken a head coaching job without a good quarterback on the roster. Like that was a thing that he needed in order to accept a coaching job. Smart. I just have a really hard time believing that he was like, oh yeah, Casey Thompson. That's why I'm going to Texas. Thompson did look good in that bowl game, but I have to believe that he was talking about Card in that scenario. And the coaches raved about Card. They said he looked really good in practice last year. I'm sure there was this huge long interview, and then the guy writing it, kind of cut out the quotes to do whatever he wanted to with them. But basically, the way they phrased it in here was that Casey Thompson was fine, but Card is just dripping with upside, and that Sark is really going to want to work with that. So I think I'm in a mock right now. I took Hudson Card in like the 5th round, I think, of a C2C startup, and I think that might look like a steal by year's end.
Yeah, I actually this year traded Sam Darnold I was in a league that I was rebuilding for Hudson Card. So that's good news.
Yeah. So just to reference that article here for Austin, I figured I'd show it. Oh, I just got kicked out, didn't I? Go ahead, Felix. My computer's not working. Go ahead.
Listen, I took a look at Casey Thompson in preparation for today's show, and I was very impressed with what I saw. This kid came in as a backup quarterback in the Alamo Bowl and would not stop throwing the ball less than 30 yards down the field. He was just throwing it down the field every single play, throwing the ball down the field, and was connecting and showed some mobility. I went back and looked at his high school stats. This is a kid who averaged 14.6 yards per attempt his senior and junior seasons. Now, I don't know what the equivalent is at the high school level, but when you talk about the college level, anything over 10 or so is just showing being really aggressive, throwing the ball downfield. And here is Casey Thompson playing in New Jersey, I believe, averaging 14.6 yards per attempt. So he is an aggressive player, and I wouldn't sell him short. And, maybe he doesn't get the job there, but maybe he transfers somewhere next year and we see him really develop. He's 6'1", I believe, 190 something pounds, but he's got some gunslinger to him. And I really like his game, especially what we saw in the Alamo Bowl. Bruning, you got anything to add before we move on?
We might have lost him.
We might have lost him. All right, here we go. All right. We're going to come back to you, Brandon. I want to talk about the Alabama backfield a little bit. Stacked backfield. They got Kamar Wheaton, who was supposed to go to Oklahoma, but he's the number 4 running back, a 4-star prospect. They got Jace McClellan. They've got Brian Robinson, who feels like he's been there for years and years.
Yeah. 4 years already, I think.
And they've got Trey Sanders, who was the number 1 running back in the 2019 class. Who of these 4 are you saying I need to have on my Devy or my C2C rosters?
Well, out of all those, it's going to be Chase McClellan. Trey Sanders, I have a ton of shares of. I mean, we all bought him last year. Unfortunately, he got into that accident and didn't get on the field this year. So it's a hip injury. Apparently, the surgery went well. He'll be back. I mean, I imagine it's going to be McClellan and Trey Sanders. I can't imagine Wheaton getting here and getting on the field with all of that talent in front of him. So, and Keelan Robinson, I think, is going to be sprinkled in. I mean, he's a big kid. He's 6'1", 230 or 225 or something like that. So, I mean, maybe it's just a timeshare. I mean, I got lots of shares in McClellan and Trey Sanders. So I have no Robinson shares, and I'm sure I have got a few Wheaton shares as we do our drafts coming up. But I'm going to say McClellan and Trey Sanders, and I think it's going to be a battle between those two.
Austin, who you got between those 4?
Oh man, I think I think they'll probably split those carries pretty cleanly next year. I have to imagine Robinson probably gets the bulk of the touches. I think Wheaton needs a year. I'm not a big Wheaton guy. I see a lot of Chuba Hubbard when I watch him, and that's like not a good thing. A lot to learn at the position. I think they'll a little bit of thunder and lightning combo with McClellan and Robinson, but I'm still saying don't forget about Sanders, man. I mean, a couple weird injuries is not it's not the end of the world for him. I think Saban's going to give him every opportunity to get touches in that backfield next year.
I think that all 4 of these guys are going to be a little more expensive than I'm willing to pay because there is going to be a committee backfield there, and I don't know that we see any one of these guys as being a potential first-round draft pick, or first-round or second-round pick. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Bryce Young led Alabama in rushing next year, even though Young kind of scrambles to throw. But I could see, because the touches are going to be split between those 4, that Bryce Young actually leads Alabama in rushing, but they could be throwing the ball all over the place. Bruning, it looks like you're back with us. Do you have is there one of these Alabama running backs that you need to have above the others?
Well, I like Jace better, but I think Brian Robinson's going to get more run. And just to finally throw this up here, the thing that finally kicked me off my screen, just to give you guys in full context of what Austin was talking about earlier with this article, just because I thought it was kind of funny. That was more about Bijan Robinson, though. But anyways, yeah, I think it's going to be split between those 2 guys. I do agree with Austin. Kamar Wheaton likely doesn't get much work this year. It just seems like that's what Alabama does, right? They hold on to these running backs, and then right as they get to that junior, senior year, that's when those guys start to get playing time. So I'm going to lean those 2 guys. I honestly think Trey Sanders might end up transferring if I had to guess. So.
All right, one more backfield before we jump into a freshman rookie draft. We want to talk about Oklahoma. Again, stacked. You had Eric Gray transfer there. He can do kind of everything. You got Kennedy Brooks, who sat out this year, who is going to come back next year. You got the redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore next year in Marcus Major. You got TJ Pledger, and you got Seth McGowan, who a lot of people were high on. This is a ridiculously loaded backfield, a lot of bodies there. Brandon, is there one of these guys that you prefer above the others?
Well, I was really bummed when Eric Gray decided to go to Oklahoma because you and I had talked about Marcus Major before. I was hoping that maybe this would get his shot. He's a young guy who, really had some nice carries towards the end of last year. McGowan kind of fell off last year a little bit, probably more because of Stevenson had arrived and they just pretty much fed him the ball. But I have to think that Eric Gray got the green light that he's going to be getting play time. Given if he's got aspirations of going to the NFL, I can't imagine he would decide to go there if, in fact, that the coaching staff hadn't said something to him like, yeah, you're going to be an integral part of this. I'm going to have to say Eric Gray gets a lot of the carries, and maybe they give McGowan, like we talked about pre-show, he got chased in the second level, and they kind of pulled him out a little bit, but maybe he can be more the short gain guy, and then they put Eric Gray in. But again, it's going to be one of these backfields that is going to really be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Bruning, do any one of these 5 guys, do any one stick out over and above any of the others to you?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Eric Gray, and that's just because I'm probably going to make you happy with this one. It really seemed like Oklahoma's offense and Spencer Rattler played better when Ramondre Stevenson started doing what he was doing with that backfield, and I think Eric Gray has the best chance to replicate that for that offense. I think Seth McGowan's probably right behind him in that, but give me Gray, and I'm not even that big of a Gray guy. I mean, I traded him straight up for Grant Cannell of all people. So, but I do think Gray goes. I figured Dawson like that. I do think Gray goes in there and gets the job. That's why I think he eventually landed there instead of going to Texas. I think he knew with Bijan he wasn't going to get any kind of run going to Oklahoma. I would think maybe some kind of talk with Lincoln Riley kind of secured him that job, or he knows he's going to be starting.
I know we're talking about 2 blue blood Power 5 programs, but the answer could be no one at either of these 2 schools. Maybe Jace McClellan has the highest ceiling, but both of these offenses are going to revolve around their quarterbacks, Bryce Young in Alabama and Spencer Rattler in Oklahoma. I think both of these 2 teams make it to the playoff next year. I think that they're going to run through their schedule. So we'll see what happens with their backfields, with these loaded backfields. All right, now we're going to do an exercise that I am admittedly terrified to do. I have not dived into these freshmen like you guys may have, so you're probably going to whip my behind here. But we're going to do a freshman draft. We're going to do a freshman draft, freshman only, this 2021 class. Consider this. We're going to do 2 rounds. 12-team Superflex tight end premium. Not that there's an Eric Gilbert or a Michael Mayer in this class that I see, but maybe Brandon knows of one. So, Brandon, we will give you the honors of the first pick. That means the clock is really on me, and I got to figure out who I'm going to take. So, all right, Brandon, we'll give you the first pick. Go ahead.
I'll just take Henderson.
Easy enough, Henderson. No discussion needed.
Felix was really hoping for some more time there. Which Henderson?
I was hoping for some more time.
I'm sorry. Was I too short with that pick?
You got to give me like 30 seconds. I do have 2 players in mind. Is there anything else you want to say about Henderson?
I think we spoke about him earlier. I think he's dynamic in the field.
Right.
So I'm going to
keep his feet to the fire, Brandon. Keep his feet to the fire. Let's go, Felix. Right. Let's go.
Thank you, Brandon. I really like what I see out of Brian Thomas, the Louisiana wide receiver who's going to LSU. He actually reminds me a little bit of Preston Williams, and Brian Thomas actually wears number 11, and he wears green and white the way Preston Williams did at Colorado. Big receiver, 6'4", 200 pounds or something like that. I'm deciding between him and obviously the number. I don't even know what Brian Thomas is ranked. I'm considering him or Emeka Ibuka, who's the number 1 receiver. You look at Ibuka's film and he's making these one-handed catches. Obviously, I've got my Brock Vandagriff, who I consider, but there are other quarterbacks that I could take who will get playing time even before Brock Vandagriff does. So I think that I am going to go. I'm not going to go running back here. I'm going to go wide receiver. Unfortunately, it's an Ohio State player. I'm going to go with Emeka Ibuka and just hope that he can Brian Hartline keeps his promises and turns Emeka Ibuka into a first-round wide receiver, even though he hasn't turned anybody into a first-round wide receiver up until this point. So I'm going to go with Emeka Ibuka. Austin, or actually, Bruning, we're going to you. Who you got?
Has a wide receiver from Michigan even been drafted up before like the 4th round in the past 10 years? I didn't think so.
Is that
I'm going super flex tight end, right? I didn't miss that part, so I'm gonna go with my QB1. I'm glad Austin didn't pick before me. I'm gonna take Sam Heward. Super flex. I'm gonna take my guy right here. Not really much else to say about it. I'm cool getting my top quarterback right here.
Sam Heward, you're going with Sam Cement Shoes?
Yeah.
All right.
Sam Cement Shoes Heward. That's right.
Sam Heward. All right, Austin, you're at number 4. Who are you taking?
This is where because I know that if I don't take this quarterback, he might not be there the next time through, but it's okay. I'm going to take Aguiye Hall. He's my top wide receiver in this class. He's going to Bama. Big kid. He's like 6'3", 190 or something like that. He has that smoothness that you don't always see from those bigger guys. Like he's got like that AJ Green type skill set. And I think Bama, the cupboard is actually like moderately bare there at wide receiver right now. I didn't love any of the wide receivers they brought in last year, and really outside of Mechie, they don't have anyone on the roster that's super proven. I guess Slade Bolden or whatever. Not exactly exciting. So I think there's a chance for some of these freshmen to come in right away, and I think Hall has as good of a chance as any of them.
I feel like I still need more time. Actually, no, I don't. You know what I'm going to do?
Well, you're going to skip Brandon? I mean,
it's my turn.
Oh,
Brandon.
Oh, my bad. Go ahead, Brandon. My bad.
So I'm going to take Khalib Williams. I'm going with the upside. It's a super flex. Every league I'm in that I don't have a QB, I stink. So I am always going to take QBs in C2C leagues. I'm going to swing the fences. I think he's got the arm strength. He's going to wait. I'm going to be patient, but I'm going with the upside pick with this guy.
Now the pandemic, it seems, has thrown off some of these the opening times and getting some of those results, and so we don't have that stuff for players that we normally would. But we have it for this player, and that's Will Shipley, who's going to Clemson. Ran a sub 4.5, and I see Austin's reaction. That means I'm making a good decision here. Might be the most athletic, or at least the most athletic running back as far as testing goes in this class. You got Travis Etienne leaving Clemson. I mean, Will Shipley might start as a freshman. Now, he seems a little bit undersized to start as a freshman, but he's definitely going to have the opportunity. So it's a pretty easy pick for me. I'm going to go here at number 6, Will Shipley. I'm writing it down.
Well, since my running back 1 is off the board and I was able to get my quarterback 1, I'm going to go ahead and take my wide receiver 1 in Ja'Cory Brooks because he's still available. I really thought that maybe Austin would have taken him over a guy there, but he did not. I love Brooks here. I know a lot of people really like him, so I'm going to go ahead Ja'Cory Brooks. You can.
Where is he going, Bruni? Where?
Alabama.
I have no idea.
Alabama wide receiver.
He's going to Alabama
wide receiver.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I represent the audience here, so I'm trying
6'3", 185, 5-star. Was it? I think he's number 2 in the class, right, Austin? I got to pull up.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
He's my number 2 as well. Oh man, it's a super flex. So I guess I'll take a quarterback. I'm gonna go Tyler Buchner, and I think this is starting to become a little more chalky at this point. People are starting to identify Buchner as a guy that probably is better than his rank in the composite, which is right around QB 10. Dual threat kid. No senior year because California schools didn't play high school football this year, and he missed his sophomore year, a large chunk of it due to injury. But junior year was really, really, really good. I think he has one of the better arms in this class. And I wish that Notre Dame had a different coaching staff because I don't think he has a chance to go in and play first year. They'll play boring old Jack Cohn, and they'll win 9 games, and everyone will, I think that people will debate about whether they should fire Kelly or not. But I think it might be wheels up in year 2 for him. So I'll go Tyler Buchner, quarterback, Notre Dame.
Brandon, we are back to you with the number 9 pick. Who are you taking?
Well, I got my running back first. I got my QB. Now I'm going receiver, and I'm going to take JoJo Earl. He is a dynamic playmaker from Bama. Watching him, I made a couple game films on him. He reminds me of Jalen Waddle. So he's 5'9", 170. So he's not typically the kind of receiver that I like. He's a little guy. Usually I kind of like him a little bigger and physical. But 4.3 speed, 4.36 verified speed. So he's a speedster. You watch his film, he's dynamic all over the field. So I'm going to go with the upside. He's undersized, but I think he could be a Jalen Waddle size by the time he as far as weight wise anyway, by the time he comes out in 3 years.
I tell you what, this draft is going great for me because I'm getting players that I like, and I've waited till
Guys you
number
haven't
10 to
scouted
make
yet?
this. No, I'm all guys that I've scouted. That's all. That's the only
okay.
thing that I'm taking is guys that I've scouted.
Oh, gotcha.
That's yeah. So so I get to take my favorite player, my favorite quarterback in this class after taking Emeka Egbuka, after taking Will Shipley. I'm going to get Brock Vandagriff here at number 10. That's an easy pick for me because he's my number one quarterback in this class. So, Bruning, we are back to you. Go ahead.
So I need a running back here. I'm going to go with LJ Johnson, 5'10", 204. He is RB3 for 247, RB4 in the composite, verified 4.42 speed, has that top end speed. I like his low center of gravity when he runs the ball. So give me him. He is going to Texas A&M.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking him for me, Matt, because it makes this next decision a little bit easier. I am going to take Lonnie White Jr. And I have
figured you'd get your guy eventually.
I have been doing the show circuit over the past couple of months, just heaping loads and loads of praise on this kid. He's going to Penn State, a little lower ranked in the composite. He's right around number 30. But I think that's because he played a lot of Wildcat quarterback up until this year where he finally dedicated himself to wide receiver. I think he has one of the better sets of hands in this class, and I think the depth chart behind Parker Washington and Jahan Dotson just is not very good there. So I think he has every opportunity to get some snaps as a true freshman.
Who was that you
picked? I've been one of those. Lonnie White Jr.
Lonnie White Jr., yeah. He's
he loves him. Austin loves him.
And if I could just co-sign, I've been able to watch some Lonnie White because of Austin. Played quarterback and then played. As a matter of fact, I was like, why isn't this guy playing quarterback at the next level? He's a mobile guy, explosive player. And I can't wait to see what he's going to do at Penn State from Pennsylvania. And so they're going to love him in Happy Valley there. So, all right, that's the end of the first round. I don't even think I could say all of these names. Let's see. We got we got Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, Sam Heward. Is it Aggie Hall? How do you say his name?
Dealer's choice, I think.
Just call him a guy. All right.
I got Caleb Williams, Will Shipley, Ja'Cory Brooks, Tyler Buchner, JoJo Earl, Brock Vandagriff, LJ Johnson, Lonnie White. I'm glad that I got through that without having another goof. All right, here we go. Brandon, we're back to you at the top of round 2, pick 13. Who are you taking?
I'm going to, again, wait on another quarterback. I'm doubling down on the QBs early here. I'm going to take Kyle McCord of Ohio State.
Fuck.
I
really don't think anybody else is going to take him.
He's actually, I've been watching a lot of him because he, is about 30 minutes from me in Philadelphia at St. Joe's Prep. My brother went to St. Joe's Prep, and my other brother, lives 2 blocks away from where they play ball down in Center City. So, and I just made a game film of Marvin Harrison Jr. and really liked what I saw with Kyle McCord. He's got the mobility. He's already got the size, 6'3", 215, 5-star prospect. Super flex league. I'm doubling down on the quarterback early.
Yeah, that was a great pick. He's going to be the starter for Ohio State this year. So congratulations, Brandon.
Brandon, if you didn't know, Mr. McCord has a gun to Mr. Bruning's head and has made him say that. So, all right.
At all times.
All right, here we go. I'm not hiding that I'm not as adept to this class as I will be. But I am going to go with the player that I mentioned earlier. He's one of the bigger athletic wide receivers. I believe he can be a physical presence at LSU. And again, he reminds me of a little bit of Preston Williams. And so I'm going to take Brian Thomas Jr., the 6'4", but one of the bigger wide receivers in this class at LSU. So give me Brian Thomas. All right, Bruning, we're back to you.
So I got to take a Buckeye at some point in this draft. It wouldn't be right if I didn't. So I'm going to take Evan Pryor, 5'10", 190. Let's see here. 4-star. What was he on 247 here? Austin, can you help me out real quick? Never mind. 7 with 6 as the composite ranking. Verified 4.31 shuttle. I think he's going to be really good. Me and Austin have talked about. I know Austin's actually talked about him here and on his other podcast a lot, the Campus 2 Canton podcast. Think he will split time with Travion Henderson next year because I do think him and Henderson and Teague will split time this year a lot. But he's can do everything. Really good change in directions and good high end speed. Also a very good pass catcher.
This gives me a tough decision at this point. I guess I'll go at this point. I'm just taking BPA. I'm going to go Destin Hill. He's my wide receiver 5 in the class out of Louisiana. He is going to Florida State, 6 foot 200, the number 19 wide receiver in the composite, I believe. Number 18, number 19. Yes. Good burst, good athleticism. We don't have a lot of times for some of these guys this year because of everything going on, but he has a verified 11:09 100 meter, which translates to about a 4.5 40, just a little bit over that. So you got to figure he can get that a little bit faster. And Florida State just not, again, another team doesn't have a lot there right now. The cupboard's kind of bare. I think he can go in and compete for touches as a freshman.
Who was that, Austin? Who did you take?
It's a Destin Hill.
Destin Hill. All right. All right, Brandon, we are back to you. We're getting pretty deep here, or at least it feels like.
Yeah, we are getting kind of deep. I'm going to go with Camaro Edmonds going to North Carolina. Big kid, 5'11", 227 pounds. I like big running backs. I think he has an opportunity. I'm not sure who's going to be running the ball in North Carolina this year, so it's as good as any opportunity to get on the field. That'll make the production and metric and analytic guys happy if he actually gets on the field this year. But playing with Sam Howell, I think if he comes into camp, 4-star prospect, I don't have a 40 on him, but I'm going to go with the upside with him going to North Carolina.
He's got the prototypical size, and we actually profiled him on an earlier show of the Devy debate. So I like that because of, North Carolina losing 2 backs. And I was already planning on going back to North Carolina with my pick. I'm going to take the last 5-star quarterback, according to 24/7, being Drake May. Sam Howell is going to be gone after this year. And so give me a quarterback who's going to start as either a redshirt freshman or a sophomore. Bruning, we're back to you.
So I want to get at least one more quarterback in this draft. So I'm going to take Jackson Dart going to USC, 6'3", 210, number 12 for 247.9 in the composite rankings. What did I put down here on him? So I like his touch on the ball and his versatility, very accurate passer. And I do think he eventually takes over next year once Keaton Slovis moves on, assuming he does. If he has another bad year, maybe he'll be back again. But I would imagine he leaves for the draft after next year, leaving Dart to take over.
All right. So I'm going to go.
Let me just add that Austin is having fun here because, Austin and Colin go so deep in their show. If you're not listening to the Campus to Canton podcast, they do this all the time. So Austin is just in all his glory right now, picking all his guys where I'm struggling. Go ahead, Austin. Who you got?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. A lot of my guys are falling to me here, so this has made me very happy. So I'm going to take Travion Cooley here, a running back that I think like the online, Devy community likes more than it seems like the ranking services do. He's a number 20 or number 19 running back in the composite. He's a very high 3-star. Going to Louisville. I don't know why this kid is rated so low. Really, really good athlete. He's got like a 4.4 verified 40. And I think he's quicker than he is fast, which is scary. He reminds me just so much of DeAndre Swift. And again, another situation where I think he can go in that Javian Hawkins leaves covered pretty bare there. I think he could get some touches here as a freshman.
All right, Brandon, last pick for you at 21. Who are you taking?
Did anyone take Kamar Wheaton?
No, I don't believe so.
No. All right. He's I want to make this easy. He's ranked pretty high. I can't say I've watched a ton of film on this guy, but I don't know. I just did 3 mock drafts this week, Devy mocks, with C2C mocks with Devy Watch and the Draft Bible, and he was one of the top guys coming off the board. So I can't say I've watched a ton of film on him yet, but I'll take him running back, see what happens.
And I'm struggling between 2 players, JJ McCarthy, who I mentioned earlier, and Marvin Harrison Jr., who is another. I just picked a 6'4" wide receiver. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is 6'3" or something like that. Very athletic player, probably won't be a player who tests very well. And I am having a hard time between he and McCarthy. But I've already got 2 quarterbacks. So I am going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm so glad that I'm done. All right, Bruning, let's go back to you for your last pick. Who you got?
So I'm going to go way off the board here, and I'm going to go Gavin Blackwell. So he is the 37th ranked wide receiver for 247, 41st in the composite rankings, going to North Carolina, 5'11", 164. 4-star, if I didn't mention that. So he was the 55-meter state finalist for him. Fluid runner. I like his awareness to find holes in the defense. Great speed. I like that he played both outside and in the slot. I think with North Carolina losing both Daz Newsome and De'Ame Brown, he could actually start this year with Sam Howell. My biggest thing on him is he needs to add weight. I think he could be a guy who breaks out his freshman season there with that North Carolina offense. You're welcome.
So for my last pick, this is not a pick that I would take anywhere close to this early in an actual draft, but I just want to give this guy a shout out on the show. He's a big favorite of mine. It's Jackson Meeks, the 3-star wide receiver that's going to Georgia this year. Like for most of these 3-star guys, like when I go look at them, I want to see, why is this kid a 3-star if I think they look significantly better? And for Meeks, the answer was very easy. He got a significant knee injury the very end of his sophomore year, which knocked him out of all of his junior year. And people that follow the recruiting circuit know that's like when you do your camps and you're doing all these different activities, your 7-on-7s, and that's when you really start solidifying that draft capital. So Meeks missed out on all of this, but he tore it up in Alabama this year, playing in like their highest level of competition. I think he's not going to play right away. He'll go to Georgia. He'll sit for at least a year. But it would not shock me if it's like Chris Olave with Ohio State a couple years ago, where he was an afterthought in that recruiting class, and then we look back in 3 years and he's like the best receiver that comes out of it. So just to give Jackson Meeks a little bit of love on the show here.
And let's recap this. So we did 2 rounds. The first round went Travion Henderson, Emeka Ibuka, Sam Howell, Agai Hall, Caleb Williams, Will Shipley, Ja'Cory Brooks, Tyler Buchner, JoJo Earl, Brock Vandagriff, LJ Johnson, Lonnie White Jr. Then in the second round, we had Kyle McCord, Brian Thomas, Evan Pryor, Destin Hill, Kamaro Edwards, Drake May, Jackson Dart, Travion Cooley, Kamar Wheaton, Marvin Harrison Jr., Gavin Blackwell, and Mr. Irrelevant there, Jackson Meeks, Austin with that last pick. All right. We normally close our show with parting shots, and Brandon, I believe you are going to join us with this segment today, so we will turn it over to you for your parting shot. Go ahead, Brandon.
I am a disgruntled Eagles fan. My beloved Eagles are at a crossroads. Many problems exist within the organization, and the handling of Carson Wentz is the biggest Philadelphia sports blunder in recent memory. It all starts at the top with Lurie and Roseman. I've been a fan for years, but sometimes change is required to reboot your organization and provide a new vision. This was the moment, and it was lost. Unfortunately, Jeffrey Lurie put his friendship in front of business that usually never works out in the end. The fans in this town expect accountability, and they did not get it. Howie was again given the keys to the kingdom. Bad drafting, bad cap management, lack of talent has set this organization back for years, and the owner has decided to ignore his production and results. So now they find themselves in a situation where they are trying to trade their former star. It's been an emotional roller coaster ride for the beleaguered quarterback. He needs a fresh start. He needs to go to Indianapolis. Frank Wright spent 2 seasons, 2016 and 17, as the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia with Wentz as his quarterback. It was his best years. In 2017, he would have won the MVP before tearing his ACL. It's been reported that it was Reich and not Doug Peterson who masterminded the offense and the Philly special. Wentz just finished his worst season in NFL history, or in his NFL career. He had 16 touchdown passes to go with 15 interceptions and was sacked 50 times. To top off this disastrous season, the one-time franchise quarterback was benched in favor of Hurts, who was shockingly selected in the second round of last year's draft. It's time for Carson to get a fresh start, and I'm happy for him. Philly is a tough town to play for. Wherever he goes, I'm pulling for him. Your biggest fan.
All right, so I'm probably going to be the most unprepared out of all of us because I did not do one. So I was extremely busy today. So I'm just going to go off the head really quick with some stuff that's been going on. I've obviously, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I've had a pretty rough past 2 weeks. And what I've learned from that is something I know I don't think we talked about it on air, but Brandon mentioned as we were talking before the show starts that I've realized you need to stop working for other people and work for yourself. We do this for fun. A lot of us do this because we love it. We don't necessarily do this because we don't know if we're ever going to make a future out of this. And I've learned through my time in this business and doing stuff that a lot of people who may say have your back don't, and they don't treat you great, and they use your work for themselves to promote themselves up and never promote yourself. Find people who believe in you and work with them and support the things that they do. I'm lucky enough to say that I have 2 people on this podcast that support me and have had my back through everything, and I'm glad to be working with you guys, Colin as well, Alfred, Jarek. There's a couple other people that have supported me throughout all this. Brandon, you've reached out with a lot of nice words as well with everything going on, so I appreciate that. So my biggest takeaway from this is do what you do for what you love, and do it because you love it, not because you want to gain recognition. Because if you do it that way, I don't think you're going to get the recognition that you think you deserve.
The Hall of Fame selection of a beloved Detroit Lion should be a celebration and a celebration only, especially for an unabashed Lions fan who followed the entirety of Calvin Johnson's career from playing with Georgia Tech, number 21, on the 2005 NCAA video game all the way through his 10 for 137 performance on the road against Chicago in his final game for the inept Lions franchise. But Calvin's Hall of Fame selection was marred by an unnecessary distraction. Calvin was a first ballot Hall of Famer, but Terrell Owens was not. Instead of celebrating the man appropriately nicknamed Megatron, social media went into a bit of a tizzy, questioning how could Johnson be a first ballot Hall of Famer when Owens had to wait until his 3rd year of eligibility to be honored. It's a reasonable question. Owens finished his career 3rd all-time in both receiving yards and touchdowns, and 8th in receptions. As dominant as Johnson was, his career was relatively brief by comparison, and his numbers did not threaten the all-time record books like Owens' numbers did. For comparison, the other first ballot Hall of Fame wide receivers include Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, Steve Largent, Paul Warfield, Lance Allworth, and Raymond Berry. The boon of the NFL passing game in the early 2000s arguably revolved around Moss and Owens. Owens is undoubtedly in the conversation as one of the 3 or 4 best wide receivers of all time. But fans shouldn't pit Johnson and Owens' careers against each other. Both deserved their respective selections. Instead, fans should direct their attention to the Hall of Fame voters who need to answer some questions themselves. After all, the questioning of Johnson's Hall of Fame selection is their fault. Johnson deserved to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but so did Owens, period. The fact that he was not is evidence of the voters holding a years-long grudge against Owens, perhaps for doing sit-ups in his driveway during training camp. Sure, Owens had his issues, but let's not pretend that first ballot selections are reserved for righteous men. Brett Favre held the Packers hostage for years with threats of retirement, and he forced his way to a division rival. He made questionable decisions off the field during his time in New York. Lawrence Taylor's drug abuse and partying didn't prevent him from being selected in the first year of his eligibility. Quite simply, Terrell Owens was an elite player for portions of 2 decades. Whether someone believed that he was a nice guy should not have played a role in his Hall of Fame selection, but it did, and that's a shame.
For those that were not aware, there was a game this past Sunday, and it decided the champion of the National Football League. And there have been a litany of storylines following the game, including but not limited to the halftime show, which I hated. It gave me motion sickness and finally made me realize that maybe I am old. The score line, the Bucs W. The legacy of a certain Mr. Brady. I can finally admit that he's the GOAT. And the amazement of the general public at the job the NFL did to survive a COVID-impacted season. The storyline I don't see enough people talking about, the winner between the Super Bowl coaching staffs. I mean, sure, Andy Reid and company may have come into the game with a game plan that could conservatively be called arrogant, a game plan in which the Chiefs refused to keep additional blockers and to protect Patrick Mahomes, despite the loss of both of their starting offensive tackles. And yes, Todd Bowles has deservedly received praise for coaching up the Tampa Bay defense, a group that he had humming on all cylinders at the most important part of the year. But that is not what I am referring to. Bruce Arians has long been a proponent of diversity within football. And unlike most NFL personalities, the man has talked the talk and walked the walk. This season, Tampa has minority coaches at both coordinator positions, a feat more rare than it should be. These 2 coaches' stocks were on opposite ends of the spectrum coming into the season. Bowles was coming off a disastrous time in New York with the Jets, finishing with a 24-40 record there, while offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich is often considered an up-and-comer in the coaching circles. But perhaps even more importantly than his two coordinators, Tampa also employs two female coaches, with assistant defensive line coach Lori Locust and assistant strength and conditioning coach Maral Javadifar. On the flip side, not only were the Chiefs thoroughly outcoached, assistant coach Britt Reed, son of head coach Andy Reid, was involved in what is rumored to be a drunk driving accident days before the big game, but was still allowed to be on the sideline for the Super Bowl. I hesitate to make any comments insinuating the KC franchise has become rather loose with their standards, but this is certainly a black eye on a franchise that may have already been sporting two of them. Sometimes actions speak louder than words, and there may not be two coaching staffs that epitomize this concept for better or for worse.
We want to thank our guest, Brandon Lejeune, for joining us. You can find our written content on Google Docs somewhere. You can email the show at Devy Debate. Follow the show on Twitter. Apologies to Kirk Herbstreit. We went a little long with Brandon. We will get him rescheduled soon. For Matt Bruning, for Austin Nace, and Brandon Lejeune, I'm Felix Sharp. Good night and good luck. Thanks, man.
I appreciate it. That was funny.
Thanks for doing it.
I'm tired, man. It's like it's my bedtime, dude. I'm I'm getting giddy over here. I mean, I'm the old man of the group, man. So, I mean, this stuff is just so much fun. I mean, and I'm glad to see you back out there, Matt. You know what I mean? I'm sure that was really, really difficult for you. Can I ask you a question? Did the nerds put that out there, or did somebody catch it and just post it on Twitter?
No, someone posted it on Twitter.
That's unbelievable.
It happens. It's, you know what? I'll say this, and I know because we're still recording. We do this at after show. I don't know if you know this, so I can't say anything. But I'm glad that I'm glad that it happened. No. I meant I can't say why I'm glad that it happened, but it's led to better things for me, and so I'm actually, because I don't think I'd be where I'm about to be had that not happened. So I'm actually thrilled that it did, which is kind of weird to say now, but
yeah, that's great. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, Brandon, I know you got to get out of here. We do, sit around and talk. You're welcome to join
I'll
us.
hang out for a little bit.
Okay.
I'm good. Right. So what do you guys got cooking? You sound like you got something going on.
We have to say off air because I don't know if they want.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Not me.
Yeah, okay. I thought we were off the air. I didn't realize that we were still on for the second time.
No, it's that freshman draft. It was hard, but it was. I mean, there was enough freshmen that I had looked at. What's funny is that the guys that I like, I'm looking at Brandon's rankings on Notion on the dashboard. I'm like, Brian Thomas is like the 15th wide receiver in this class. I really like Thomas.
I'll be honest with you. I really don't have ranks on the dashboard for freshmen yet. I just have them in tiers. Right now, like the 2024 class, I just put them more in tiers. I've got a lot to do. I mean, Austin's like well ahead, and I know Bruning is too because of that damn program league that my head doesn't understand how to do anything in it.
Hey, Felix just got in. Felix just took the team over. Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
He's on the other side though. He's not against us.
He's on the program too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you guys are well ahead of me, and I'll be the first to admit it. You know what I mean? Because when I watch a player, I want to watch really everything and make films, and I got plenty of time to get on board with everybody. But yeah, the C2C leagues they're starting out there, so it's all good, man. It's just so good. It's just so much fun. So
you're ready to see Brandon. I asked this question on Twitter, like in week 14 or 15, whatever it was. I said, do you want the Eagles to draft a quarterback in the first round? And everybody was like, they're not going to do that because blah, blah, blah. If I ask you that question now, I have to imagine you say, yes, you want them to take a quarterback in the first round.
Carson Wentz, the whole town of Philadelphia right now is just on, it's like the hour watch, waiting for the news to break. So there's been no indication that they're going to draft anybody, at least from reading what I'm reading is, the local guys here are doing mock drafts. A lot of them have them taken defensive players, which is what I want them to do. Defense wins championships. I don't care what anyone says, that still holds true. But So I don't know, but if Zach Wilson was there, I mean, they wouldn't take another North Dakota State running back, would they? I mean, they would.
Quarterback Trey
I
Lance.
think I'd love it if they took Trey Lance. Oh, man.
But a new coach sometimes brings a new feel, and new coaches sometimes want their guy. And
yeah, I mean, how are you feeling about your new coach with that press conference with his stuttering and?
I can understand if he's nervous. I've been there before. I did a lot of public speaking, so I can imagine he was probably shitting his pants up there. I don't know, but we'll have to see. I just take a very docile approach to all this stuff. Let's see what he can do. I think anything's better than Peterson, though. He really, I think, lost the locker room. He let the division start in the locker room with the guys. He lost control of the team. But what a lot of people are talking about, Ron Jaworski's and the guys that are on local radio here. We had a divided locker room. Half the guys wanted Wentz, half of them wanted Hurts. So the number one thing they need to do is get rid of one of them. And it sounds like Carson Wentz is the one they've decided to move on from.
As a Lions fan, I just can't fathom getting rid of I just cannot believe you get rid of a Super Bowl winning coach. That just does not make sense to me, because we just hired Dan Campbell. If you told me I could have Doug Peterson, I'd be like, yep, sign me up. But
if you really look at his offense, he doesn't use the people properly. Carson Wentz was struggling all season. They never got Miles Sanders out in space. We lost a lot of offensive linemen, just like Dallas did, and that really hurt us. But there was no creativity. It was as though that he had an offense and he was just saying, come on, guys, you can play better. We can make this work. But Jeffrey Lurie came out, the owner, and rambled on for an hour of nonsense and said they didn't have the same vision for the future. So I don't know, maybe they had a difference of opinion on quarterback, which one they wanted to keep. But it'll be interesting. But as I tell everyone here, don't get all worked up, because I know July, when the training camps start, your ass is going to be sitting in the seats watching the football games again. And all this is going to be a distant memory. No one's going to care about the coach anymore. It's all going to be about it's football time. So
where do the Eagles have camp, Brandon?
They have it. They used to have it up in Lehigh, which is kind of north of Philadelphia, but they have a NovaCare Center down in the in Center City. It's actually right by the Link.
Oh, okay.
So they get big crowds down there for when they're allowed to have fans.
So on Sirianni really quick, because I actually was listening to some stuff on NFL radio about him. Charlie Weiss actually thinks he's going to be a phenomenal coach. I guess those two connected well in Kansas City. What, you don't like Charlie Weiss? I think he's a good coach. No?
Right. I didn't say anything.
I mean, your reaction tells it all. It's just like Austin always says, watch the reactions, don't listen to the podcast.
That's just not the endorsement I was thinking of. Charlie Weiss thinks he's going to be
that's because those two have a connection. So he was talking about, but he was also talking about, if you actually go back and look at a lot of his other interviews, he's actually very confident in everything. They said it's just they threw him out there right off the and what a lot of the people took from that press conference when he started stuttering was all the reporters were asking him about questions about Carson Wentz, which he doesn't have an answer to right now. And they were saying that's what they think kind of threw him off. So I don't think what the press conference, I feel bad. Everybody's making fun of him. I said the same thing. I mean, I stutter and kind of get a little embarrassed sometimes talking on a podcast.
Right.
And you're just first day out there as a head coach. They throw you out there. I'm like, oh, hey, by the way, we've got all these issues with our quarterback. What are you going to do? And the dude's been there for 5 minutes. With
the most vicious fan base in sports.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody's hating on him for that. I'm just like,
they'll turn on you here quick, man. I mean, they really do. And sports radio doesn't help. They're freaking brutal, man. I mean, they'll just get the whole town riled up and whatever. They went back to the Frank Reich tree. I'm telling you, Frank Reich was the guy we probably should have kept and let Doug Peterson go. He was the guy. He was our offensive coordinator. I mean, Peterson didn't have an offensive coordinator this year. He had a running backs coordinator. He had a wide receivers coordinator, and he wanted to call the plays. And what I don't understand about these coaches when they take the position, if I'm a coach, I'm a delegator, right? I have this saying at my work, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. If I was the coach, I'd want to not have to deal with calling plays. I'd want the guy maybe standing next to me where we're talking about it, but I would want to manage the game. And he apparently through this process was not willing to give up that, maybe they asked him that he needed to give that up and get an offensive coordinator, and perhaps he refused. That's another report that's out there. But they went back.
He was a quarterback, so that makes sense that Wasn't Peterson a quarterback? Peterson was a quarterback.
Yeah, he was a quarterback, but he was
Yeah.
Andy Reid's assistant. But was he really calling the plays? And but the minute he got here, he was asked, "Are you calling the plays?" And he said yes. And I think that was a bad decision. It's like, why do you need all the why don't you delegate that stuff, right? I mean, you can still take all the credit when it works. So,
I thought that we had a chance with Frank Reich because he was I don't know if he was a long time backup, but he spent time here in Detroit backing up. I think he backed up Scott Mitchell. I'm pretty sure he backed up Scott Mitchell like in the mid 90s.
Well, I mean, he did great when he was here, and look, he's done a phenomenal job in Indianapolis. I mean, he's got the team playing well. I mean, our drafting, this town's really pissed off because Howie Roseman's still here. I mean, his cap management, we're second worst we're over 60 million in the cap. We've had our last 50 draft picks. We've had 2 Pro Bowl players, and that's been Carson Wentz and Fletcher Cox, our defensive tackle. That's how bad our drafts are. He whiffs on draft picks like terribly. I mean, it's just, to not take Justin Jefferson and get hung up on the speed and pass on him for Jalen Reagor is going to be, again, because of, go ahead.
Who's not fast? Like Jalen Reagor's not necessarily.
Well, I mean,
fast.
Jefferson was just an elite route runner. I mean, he was productive at LSU. You saw it on the field. And, they got so hung up on after that draft, all they talked about was we focused on speed. So they put the blinders on in the draft, and instead of drafting a route runner who could get open and create space, they went for the speed because they wanted Deshaun Jackson too. They wanted the guy, someone Carson could throw the ball down. So they went for the speed guy and just possibly leapfrog a potential perennial top 5 wide receiver. I mean, it's unacceptable. Your scouting department, if I'm running that team, I'm like, who made that pick? I want to know all the dud picks. Who made them? Because I'm getting rid of you.
That combine last year made me believe in the numbers, because I remember when Justin Jefferson ran, everybody's like, he's not a 4.4 whatever he ran. And then when Jalen Reagor ran and he ran like a 4.56 or whatever it was, everybody like, oh, he's faster than that.
Yeah.
And obviously, Austin, do you remember what he ran? I know he ran a 4.5 something.
Who, Reagor?
Reagor ran a 4.5 something. And Justin Jefferson ran a 4.4 something, and everybody was like, "Well, Justin Jefferson, he's not a 4.4 player on tape."
Yeah,
and everybody's
Reagor
like,
ran a 4.47.
"Oh, did he? Okay, so he was still but people thought that he could have been the fastest player at the combine."
Yeah, and Jefferson ran a 4.43 or a 4.44. So,
okay,
yeah,
but I mean, I'm not mischaracterizing there. I feel like because Jefferson tested well all around, and people said that he doesn't show that athleticism on tape, and Reagor at his size and weight was kind of like okay, and people said, well, he came in because he was heavy, he was like 205, and people said, well, he's at 205, he's going to play at 190 and he'll be more athletic than this. But I don't know that we ever saw that last year in Philadelphia. So
yeah, they couldn't get him the ball. And I'll be honest with you, I watched a lot of Jalen Reagor. My wife, she's a football head too. She knows just as much as me. And she pointed out something to me. His body language sucked all year. When he'd get off the field, like when he would drop a pass, he'd pout on the, and the guys would come over, lift him up. He never smiled. He looked like no confidence out on the field. He lost every contested catch opportunity. Carson Wentz struggled getting him the ball, no doubt, but he didn't make one freaking play all year that was a highlight film at all until Jalen Hurts got in there where he hooked up with him on a long pass. But other than that, Peterson couldn't scheme him, couldn't get him open. I mean, we couldn't even do crossing patterns or mesh concepts or just to get the guy open in space and get the ball in his hands. It was just awful.
And he started the season with a broken finger or whatever it was. I have Jalen Reagor in one league. In a league that I was rebuilding, I traded Julio Jones and got Reagor in a first for him. And I thought that was, a good trade. I don't know. I can't remember what year the first is, but I thought I'm getting a young wide receiver. I don't know that I necessarily want to have Jalen. I mean, what are you doing with him if you have him on your roster and you're like, if you could flip Jalen, you probably couldn't even do this, but if you could flip Jalen Reagor in this class for like the 109, 108, would you do it?
if there was a player on the board that I was super psyched about, yeah, I probably would. I would take the thing. He's not meant to be a wide receiver one. That's a problem. I mean, he was never meant to be here to be a wide receiver one, but yet they're expecting him to be that. Our receivers are so piss poor, it's unbelievable. I mean, they, and in defense of Carson, we haven't had since the guy you talked about, Terrell Owens. I mean, we have not had a prolific wide receiver one in this town since Terrell Owens. They've not surrounded him with, bringing Alshon Jeffries, then they sign him to long deals, and we're paying Jeffries for 2 more years, like $15 million on the cap. I mean, that's ridiculous for a 30-year-old wide receiver.
Austin, I feel like I know the answer, your answer to that question. If you can flip Rieger for like even the 110 right now, or 2021 110, I assume that you're doing that.
Yeah, that's Rondale range, right?
I know. Then that's what I was saying. Like, in Rondale is your number 1 wide receiver, and I would definitely rather have Rondale than Jalen Rieger. So,
well, especially given our situation. I mean, if we had a wide receiver one and he just had a bad year and he just maybe didn't adjust, but there's a lot of uncertainty right now. New quarterback, new system. So yeah, you're rolling the dice. If there's a guy you love in there, I'd trade him in a heartbeat.
Okay. Yeah, it's very much like a glass half full, glass half empty. You can look at that situation and say, well, they need someone to step up, and
absolutely,
someone's got to catch the ball next year. But there's also we don't know who the quarterback is, and the supporting cat's not great either. Yeah,
you really need to give these guys at least 2 or 3 years before they get to their true value. You're going to have your guys like Jefferson just pop, their rookie year, but in most cases, sometimes it takes these guys to develop a little bit. It's a big transition.
So. I know Austin doesn't like this guy, but I'm still high on Brian Edwards. And he didn't do anything this year. But and Chris Moxley says, well, he's a senior coming out, so the NFL didn't like him. But I mean, he's 21, a 21-year-old senior. So, well, Brandon, we don't want to hog your time.
All right, man. Well, listen, I really appreciate the invite, guys. Anytime, and I'll probably start doing some guests as well on my pod. Every time I think I'm going to do it in the next few weeks, I just never get to it. I'm just focused on doing stuff. So he's back.
Sorry, yeah, my wife just got home. I was talking to her about something.
Yeah, no worries, man. All right, guys, I'll let you do your chat, man. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks for jumping on, Brandon.
Yeah, you got it. Anytime, guys.
So I got to dip here in a few minutes because I got 2 hours of work.